Two friends meet up to drink some beers and talk about past times. Not yesterday, but long ago, it's scandals, wars and crimes. From Stalin's reign to Prohibition, Tudors, Pompey, Bush and NASA's mission, Edison's bulk, Genghis Khan's rise to victory. Forget your old teacher, it's time for Pint-Sized History.
Hello and welcome to an episode of Pint-Sized History with me, Zack.
And me, Joe.
And you might be noticing, if you're watching the visual podcast, it feels like we're constantly changing at the moment. But this is our first ever virtual episode of the Pint-Sized History podcast. And I must say, Joe is not pleased. Joe has been...
That's not true. That's not true at all. I don't know, why would you say such a thing? No, I previously we've talked about doing some ones from our own homes, just because it makes it a bit simpler, a bit easier. And in the past, I've always been a bit like, will it work? Will it do it? Zack, after lots of persuading, has convinced me. And you know what? I think this is going to go great now. I think I'm the one that's looking forward to this, and now you're the one that's dreading it. So actually, it's you that's in the mud. I'm feeling good.
Yeah, I'm just, I don't like change. I'm just quite autistic, I think.
So why did you keep asking to change it to online then?
Because then it means, you know, if I'm feeling like an off-the-cuff little rant about something, I could just you know, see what's happening in the news and come on, maybe even on my own, without you, and do a little 15-minute segment on like Iran or Trump and ICE. Who knows? No, not that.
So really, you're doing this to phase me out. So that's why we're doing this. The first one's going to be me, and then the second one's going to be like half my face cut off, and then by like the episode 3 of us doing it online, suddenly it's just going to be you ranting away.
I can't really phase you out. I think you're the thing that really keeps on giving in this podcast. You're the talent.
That's not true.
I'm just the pretty face. Anyway, we're for a bumper episode. Firstly, we're still drinking. It's Pint-Sized History, so I have a nice pint of beer here.
That's right. I don't have my Pint-Sized History glass though, which is annoying. I wish I had.
Have you got a tumbler? Is that a tiny tumbler?
It's just a cute little glass. All I could find. I mean, I quite like drinking out of these. It's quite sophisticated, but
is it?
Yeah, I don't actually. I need to get my pint-sized, my Crate Brewery drink, a pint glass. I don't have it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Crate. Please.
Once again, thank you for joining us on the Pint-Sized History podcast. If you would politely leave us a like, a review, follow us, subscribe on our YouTube, follow us on Instagram, anything you do that would help the podcast get more attention and more coverage would be greatly appreciated. It really, really does count. So it would be amazing if you lovely, lovely viewers, lovely listeners could show us a bit of loyalty. Like, no doubt, Putin will be showing to the autocrats and oligarchs in this next episode. Right, so we're here for a bumper episode on none other than Vladimir Putin. It's part of our Rulers and Leaders series. You know, we might have done something similar on Xi Jinping and the one we don't talk about, Oda Nobunaga, quite a while ago. So I imagine this will follow in quite a similar vein, Joe, as you walk us through the life and history of Vladimir Putin and what makes Vlad tick. Vlad,
yes,
the Impaler.
You introduced that as if it was you doing it, but no, it's me doing it. So usually you let the person that's going to do all the research to announce what we're talking about, but no, that's fine. So we're going to do Vladimir Putin.
You're so protective. Put tariffs on me soon for going over.
For tariffs. Well, look, I might start a special military operation on you in a moment because you're really pissing me off. You did Xi Jinping quite a while ago. And that was really fun. People really liked it as well. That was one of our more popular ones. But more importantly than that, we really enjoyed talking about something that's current, but you know, it's steeped in history. You're talking about their life, and we thought it was only a matter of time before we did Vladimir Putin, and we might do some others as well at a certain point. But this seemed like it was going to happen eventually, and I made sure I got in there first and did the research before Zack could, because I really wanted to do it. So
yeah, there's plenty to talk about, isn't there, when it comes to Putin? I know a fair bit about Putin's life, not a lot.
Yeah.
And
good. I can't wait for you to interrupt me over and over throughout this pod. Then that's gonna be great.
Are we calling him Putin?
No,
Putin, isn't he?
You just say it. Just say it normally. No one's gonna care.
Because I think the actual pronunciation is Putin or something like that.
Vladimir Putin.
Magnificent language. That.
It is. I love Russian. And I love the history of Russia.
Love Russian.
I do.
The first ever time I've heard you say anything positive about the language whatsoever.
What? No. Well, I mean, that's not like I talk about it often, but no, I do like Russia. I do think Russia has got a incredibly interesting history and culture. But as I finished doing these notes, I was thinking to myself, man, they have gotten so unlucky with leaders. Like, holy shit. They've got like the most beautiful country and just the most consistent line of awful, awful leaders, just one after another. So
I'm under the impression that the average Russian are fairly big proponents of dictatorship. I think they think that, I've seen a lot of like vox pops with Russian citizens, and certainly among like the older generation. And this could be completely false. I mean, I don't know. You can't really get like.
But you're taking that at face value so much.
I'm just saying. But the old generation, you see a lot of the times they're saying like, you need a strong leader, a strong person who can like control the bureaucracy and the different institutions coming out.
That's like saying, I get this impression that Britain really wanted to leave the European Union, because you look at these clips of old people and they go, well, I want my country back. I want my country to... It's like, well, yeah, of course.
Wake up. We did leave the European Union.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, that's not the heart...
example.
That's not... No, it's not, because that's not the heartbeat of a country. Like, if you were to poll the United Kingdom now, guess what? You'd find out that the majority of the country either don't realise they've been misled or want, us to come back into the EU. The fact of the matter is that older generations, especially in a country that has had non-stop, constant propaganda fed through state media since World War II, in fact, before World War II, of course they're going to believe that. I mean, Jesus Christ, that's kind of the point of a nation like this. It's like the same with... That's like you saying... I have a feeling that the North Koreans really like the Kim family, Like, my God. I don't know what it is. Something the fabric of their mind, that they just got this innate understanding. It's like, well, yeah, of course, because they've been fed it for generations.
Yeah, my perception is that some people are, like, really subservient. Like, some people really like dictatorship, and then other people don't. Like, the French, like, they're on the complete extreme of the spectrum. They hate anyone with, like, any power over their lives, and they protest immensely. But then, like, the other side of the spectrum is, like, the Chinese and Russians and the North Koreans, who are just sort of like, we kind of had a revolution 100 years ago, and I guess it's okay. Like, it's not too bad. And then, you get to the Urals in Siberia, where, like, 18-year-old men are being flown off to Odessa and Donetsk.
Oh, God, okay. No, in fairness, I do actually kind of agree with your sentiment that maybe people are just a slightly bit more inclined. But the way you're putting it is like the Russian people are very stark in one direction. I just don't think that's true. I just think that's what's going to happen. If any culture has got this non-stop state propaganda saying this is how it should be. Also, and this is an important thing that we've been talking for so long, I haven't even explained. What we're going to be talking about in this episode is Soviet Russia and Putin up to the point that Putin comes into power. It's going to be about his life, and then another time we're going to talk about what it's like for his power afterwards. But there's just so much to discuss with Putin and the Soviet Union in the early days of Russia that's really interesting. And once Putin is in power, of course the old generations think he's done a good job, because Putin is able to take away so many civil liberties that many people don't care about for the sake of saving and solving the economy. So of course these people think, oh, well, the strongman's the answer because we couldn't pay for bread before, and now Putin's in charge and the economy's boomed. But the fact of the matter is, that's not, they're interviewing very specific people that have a very specific mindset. That does not mean that Russia in general prefer, that exact type of person. I do think the Russian culture is very macho in general. I think they do appreciate that kind of strongman mentality anyway. Yeah. But to say like, oh, there's way more nuance to what you're saying. You're too black and white.
The point I'm trying to get, I guess, is like, I wonder if an element of why they're so happy to go along with a dictatorship and a strong man in charge is because, I guess, historically for Russian people, the value of their life has been like really kind of diminished. Like, if you look at all the wars that Russia have ever been involved in, their tactics are like mass assault, human wave offensives. Like, we talk a lot about the fact from Stalingrad about how like 24 hours is all you would expect to survive in the Battle of Stalingrad if you're a new recruit getting into there. So I wonder if like the Russian mindset has been preconditioned from like this lack of value that leaders have placed in them to just be like this nihilistic sort of existential, we don't really matter, I guess, to the grand scheme of things.
Quite possibly. I think that's a minor thing, if that. I don't think that solves the understanding of how Russia treats its leaders, what it wants in a leader. I think that's maybe one small part of it, but I think all these things combined, which is like why I say I think there's more nuance to it. I just think that there's way more than even we can discuss before we've even talked about Vladimir Putin and the Soviet Union and Russia. But even afterwards, we're not going to be able to explain all the different things that make Russia the way it is. But that is also why I think it's such an interesting culture and such an interesting country. I love, honestly, this has been some of the most fun I've had researching any subject. Been researching the Vladimir Putin Soviet Union, just because I love Cold War, and there's a lot of Cold War. I love learning about the collapse. I kind of love learning about.
Do you love Cold War? I'd never realised that.
I don't love nuclear.
How many episodes have you done on the Cold War? 4. I must be 3 or 4 by now. 10% of our
It might be
podcast
more.
we can't walk.
It might be more than 3 or 4. I actually don't know. Probably more, I think.
I think it's also important to preface that we have this conversation about, like, you know, whether Russians are more subservient as people. But I think, like, the crux of it is that they're just in a dictatorship and they have no freedoms. And there is this state police and there is, like, terror. And you imagine the fear that you'd have if you're a member of the public. And if you speak out, you'll get taken to they still have gulags anymore, but you get taken to prison, absolutely. You might be killed.
Yes. We've
all seen what happened to the leader of Wagner. I can't remember his name, but, you know, he died in a plane crash or plane bombing. And then you have, like, the opposition leaders. I can't remember his name.
It's Putin's arch enemy, Navalny.
Yeah, Navalny, that's it, yeah. But you've got Navalny, you've got Sergei Skripal, you've got Litvinenko. Like, there is this, if you go against the regime, you will get killed. No matter where you are, they will find you and they will kill you.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I feel we're going to talk about this in this episode, and when we talk about Putin in power another time. Assassinations are like a huge part of the fucking dialogue. You literally can't escape it. There's like serious amount of, and it made me realize researching this, like, I'm glad we're not like a really huge podcast, because talking about some of the stuff is like the UK is a hotbed for Russian assassinations, by the way. I know obviously the famous one is Salisbury a few years ago, it was, but it's not the only one. It's not the only one. The Russians have assassinated defectors and people that have run away in the UK and especially London quite a few times. So yeah, it's quite a bit terrifying.
I wonder why that is. It's probably because we're just so unbothered as a people.
Yeah.
Like, oh shit, someone got assassinated. Oh well.
Right, then let's get started, shall we? Vladimir Putin is obviously a very consequential man. More consequential than I think England really realises. Part of the reason why I feel so obligated to talk about him, and I'm sure you agree with me, is that I really don't think the majority of the UK understands just how dangerous Russia is as opposed as a threat to us right now. And that is obviously because of Putin.
You got people like Nigel Farage saying that Vladimir Putin is the politician in the world he admires the most.
Did he say that?
He said it 10 years ago. I can't remember what respect it was. There's probably some context missing there, but yeah.
Well, I'm not really referring to internal politics. I just more mean right now, and like we're not going to delve too much into current politics, but right now, due to the relationship that Putin and Trump basically have, and the way that America's trying to kind of backed off, you know, they've had a parade in Alaska with the big red carpet and stuff. It basically means that, like, due to America being the eternal enemy of Russia, the Soviet Union, and Putin, because of the fact that they're not really anymore, it means that Russia kind of needs a new place to aim its anger at, because it's, you know, always needs that enemy. Every country, if you want to keep your populace together, you have to show some sort of enemy to unite people. And for the Russians, now that America's kind of nice to them, they're now like, well, who do we go for next? Which is why Russian state TV, I don't know if any of you have seen this, but if you go on Russian state TV, they are so aggressively angry at the UK. I mean, they literally show...
They really don't like us.
They show, like, maps of where they'd nuclear bomb the UK. And they're like, we'll bomb London and Birmingham and wipe this British scum off the map. Like, they literally talk about us in that kind of context. And it's because the UK has a big influence. And for Russia, we are now the enemy. And therefore, to get into the mind of what it's like for Putin, I think is really useful for the average UK citizen. And I don't think it's been talked about enough. On top of that, Putin and Russia is just really interesting. So that's why we're going to get stuck into this.
Yeah, I think they've gone on about recently on Russian state TV. There's like literal op-eds of like how much they hate us and like how we're top of their targets list. It just feels like you're right. It's a channeling of anger, isn't it?
Think about it. All dictators, all countries that are based on this kind of fear, authoritarian, they always need an enemy. I mean, really, any country does if you really want to keep your populace completely together. But all these countries always say there's an eternal enemy that we've got to be careful about and got to deal with. And if America's suddenly not that enemy, then they need to put that anger somewhere. Otherwise, Putin, they'll start fighting each other. I mean, it's not like Russia's population is super in love with each other.
Yeah.
The cities hate the rural areas, like many countries. The Chechens are hated by everyone because Putin's made everyone believe they're fucking evil
damn Chechens.
Muslims. So England has kind of become, or the UK rather, has kind of become that new thing.
It's so weird though, because like we are so easily influenced as a nation. Like you have to wonder why Russia, considering that they influenced the Brexit vote, and they're probably going to influence every other election to make sure that Reform UK comes to power. I'm not casting any political aspersions. This is just what's happening.
This is true.
It's provable.
the head of reform, Nathan Gill, or the previous head before that, got proven
Wales
as
reform
being paid by Russian money. So like it is fact. Like there's no denying it. We're not even saying if reform's good or bad. We're just pointing out that the Russians the Russians hate us and they are actively paying reform. Like this is something that no one understands how bad this is. Anyway, sorry.
I mean, I think people do understand, but I think the status quo is like people are so upset with the way they've been treated by the successive governments for the last like 15 years that they're just like, oh fuck it, who cares? Like we just need a change of pace. Like we just need a complete reset. And like what they don't understand is they're getting this like Trumpian, Russia influenced reset of British politics, which will undoubtedly take away more of their civil liberties than they can imagine.
I mean, like I say, when we do talk about Putin in power, we're going to talk about how Vladimir Putin has essentially created this insanely impressive cyber network. I mean, the cyber attacks, the misinformation campaigns,
hybrid war,
the ability to be able to interfere in foreign elections is I mean, there are going to be documentaries about it, and you just come on, so this is more well known because it's remarkable how much of an influence they've taken on, and it's scary. It's really scary, and it frustrates me how little really it's talked about. But shall we actually talk about Vladimir Putin, or shall we just keep ranting about the current take? There's not actually too much that we know about Vladimir Putin, partly because most of the time that he's been working has been in the shadows, often a bit corrupt, and all working for the KGB, which obviously they're secret as it comes. So we don't actually know too much. But
was
what
it
I can
the
tell
KGB
you,
when it was the KGB, or was it at the KGB when it was the FSB?
No, KGB. Putin was born on the 7th of October 1952. Is Vladimir... I was about to do an accent, but I won't.
Vladimir.
Vladimir. His full name is Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin.
Vladimirovich Putin. I bet that's a spot-on pronunciation.
He was born in Leningrad, which is now...
St. Petersburg. Oh, no.
You're right. You got it. St. Petersburg. Both his parents survived the siege of Leningrad, which, if you're not aware, was a 2.5-year siege. 2.5 years. I didn't realise that was that long.
I think it's got more casualties than Stalingrad.
Well, what I think it has is more civilian casualties. It has 1.5 million civilians. 1.5 million civilians died. His mother nearly died of starvation, which is unsurprising. I bet a whole ton of that 1.5 million was starvation. While his father had severe wounds to his legs that affected him for the rest of his life. 5 of Vladimir's uncles died fighting during World War II. And Vladimir Putin had 2 older brothers. One was born 20 years before Putin but died in infancy. And Victor, born in 1940, died of starvation during the siege of Leningrad as a toddler. So not only did the mum almost die from starvation, but she lost her toddler boy, Victor.
So you said that Putin was born in 1952, not 1940?
Yes, so this is way after World War II
He's only
ended.
74, 73.
Something like that, yeah, 73.
Okay, he's fairly young, isn't he, still? Like in the grand scheme of things,
you're just saying that because like Trump and Biden are so old, but like 73 is still pretty old.
73 is not that old these days. Like,
I see what you mean. Yeah, if you're saying it like that, yeah, he could be around for another 20 years.
Yeah, 20 years. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm taking it by. Like, you think he's been in power?
I have a feeling he won't though, because he does not look particularly healthy.
No,
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if he's got
Trump.
20 years.
You know,
well, neither does Trump.
Trump looks pretty unwell.
Are we pint-sized health politics? What are we talking about here? We're just talking about the health of certain leaders. Despite Putin being an only child, because both of his older brothers were dead, died before he was born. He is from a family that has suffered enormously. You can imagine as well.
The Russian experience, though, isn't it?
Of course, yeah.
The immense suffering.
Especially coming from a city like Leningrad, you know, it's like, my God, imagine the just constant trauma for the entire city when you've been in a siege for 2.5 years and 1.5 of you, civilians, not people fighting, but civilians died. Imagine the trauma that would carry with you even 10 years, 20 years onwards. So from his perspective, as was the case for the Russian population in general, and especially in Leningrad, it was often a case of survival. Not because there wasn't enough food to go around, but more just because the war had been a war of survival for the Russians. So this idea that, like, you know, when he's born, I don't think his parents were particularly well off, and it was very much a case of like the strains and the trauma of society were still there. So he was bullied a lot. For example, he would go in the street and he was quite a small kid and he would be constantly bullied, attacked, hit. Apparently, that's why as he got older he started learning martial arts like judo. And he still practices judo to this day, as we constantly see, because he loves to show off. He was quite small.
About Vladimir Putin, but he's a Chad. Like, he's just a Chad, isn't he? He's a bear fighting, woman shagging, no nonsense Chad, isn't he?
Chad Vladimir versus Virgin Starmer. It's like,
Fucking beta Starmer, beta cuck Starmer.
We should do a trial by combat between them. Starmer v Putin, see who wins.
Vladimir, please don't go for the eyes. Please leave my eyes alone.
Putin.
Mr. Putin. Do not hip toss me, Vladimir Putin.
Nothing below the belt, Mr. Putin.
Put him up.
So no,
put him up, Mr. Putin.
Put him up.
We'll do this the old British way.
You don't know what you're in for, Vladimir.
You're in for a world of pain, you are.
I actually went to the Islington Boxing Club for 5 years before this, in preparation for this day.
I'm an athlete. I play Power League at Barnet.
I play Power League every day. I bet you don't even know what football is, do you, Vladimir?
How many Champions Leagues have Shoutout the next one? Well, they're a Ukrainian team anyway.
That's Ukraine!
I know. Well, maybe not for long.
Dynamo. Oh, I was about to say Dynamo Kiev. Fuck. What are the Russian teams? Wait, there are Russian teams.
Moscow, Spartak Moscow, Anzi Makhakha.
Thank you. Like I say, he was bullied a lot and he had to learn how to fight quite early. Unsurprisingly, because there was a lot of gang warfare in St. Petersburg in the 90s and the 1960s, he got involved in it. He was involved in these street gangs. He was involved in a bit of the fighting and a bit of the. In fact, this is one of my favourite quotes that I read of Putin while I was researching this topic. He said, this is like 10 years ago, he said this quote: 50 years ago, the streets of Leningrad taught me one rule. If a fight is inevitable, you have to strike first. So, unsurprisingly, he's in these street gangs. As a kid, he was not a great student. He would often get thrown out of classrooms and described himself in later years as a thug as a kid. And when he became a teenager, he enjoyed academia a bit more. He started reading a lot. He was reading a bit of Lenin, a bit of Karl Marx, all that bullshit, a bit of Engels. Yeah,
lovely.
He loved it. Yeah, he loved a bit of that commie manny. He also learnt German in high school.
Yeah.
Apparently, as a teenager, his dream was to become a spy. A lot of Russian kids dream that they're going to become like a Soviet cosmonaut or something. That was very much the dream.
Yuri Gagarin.
Yeah. However, for Putin, the obsession was the KGB. He would watch spy movies. He would read books. He would collect every pamphlet and brochure. And before he finished school, he contacted the KGB and asked them to enroll him once he finished school. They said to him they told him, in fact, to become a lawyer, and that they'll find him later. So that's exactly what Putin did. He studied law at the University of St. Petersburg. Yep.
My G.
Yeah, similar to you. So Putin did apply for university. He studied law. He got in. He finished. And as he's getting his degree, the KGB kept their word, and they went and asked him if he wanted a job. So I'm going to quickly describe what the KGB are, because maybe there are people that don't really understand exactly what the KGB do. They were essentially the main security agency of the Soviet Union. Their CIA and their FBI combined, basically. So the CIA in America are about stuff that's external and the FBI internal. For the KGB during the Cold War were both. They carried out internal surveillance, they carried out foreign intelligence, and they were essentially a secret police. In that aspect, they're quite similar to the Gestapo of Nazi Germany. And they would intimidate, they would assassinate, and they would carry out whatever was necessary for the sake of the Soviet state. They were synonymous with what we think of when we think of Soviet Russia. You know, they had the spies, the assassins, the security guards, the bodyguards of political leaders with KGB, counterintelligence. They were a pretty scary organization.
Yeah, they wielded so much power, didn't they?
Yeah, a crazy amount of power.
Like, even going back to like the Soviet Union with like the NKVD when they were called like Lavrentiy Beria. I'm not sure how true this is because I'm getting this from Death of Stalin. But Lavrentiy Beria, who was the head of the NKVD at the time, great film. We talk about it often here. But he was positioning himself to take over from Stalin after his death. So like,
yeah. I mean, the leader of the KGB is automatically one of the most powerful men in the country. And while the KGB was dissolved along with the Soviet Union in 1991, Russia hasn't really gotten rid of it. I mean, it's not called the KGB, but essentially the FSB.
It's the FSB now, yeah.
Well, to be fair, now it is split up, so it is more like the CIA and the FBI. The FSB are for domestic internal affairs, and the SVR are for foreign intelligence. But regardless, they still have that same organization, basically. So the KGB, while it's no longer around, it's still a thing. Like, the Russians still have a new version of it, a new reformed version. But the KGB itself ended with the Soviet Union.
The FSB is the Federalnaya Sluzhba Bezopasnosti Rossiyskoi Federacji.
There you go.
That's what it is. FSB. I'm on the list now.
Well, that's what I was thinking when I was researching this. Like, fucking, I'm talking about some important stuff here, but Basically, in 1975, Putin was hired by the KGB. He was 23 years old, and they saw his potential quite early. They gave him the rare opportunity to study in the KGB's Central Intelligence Academy, which is like this prestigious academy.
Sorry, the Central Intelligence Academy. The CIA.
That's what they called it.
The KGB CIA.
Oh my god.
No.
Oh, always has been. Oh my. Holy shit.
We just broke the fourth wall. Holy fuck. We're in the Matrix.
Oh my god. Oh
It's
my
a
god.
simulation. Oh my god, JR. He's done it again.
I'm going to give you a quote that Putin said about what drew him to the KGB. He said, "I was most amazed by how a small force, a single person really, can accomplish something an entire army cannot. A single intelligence officer could rule over the fates of thousands of people. At least that's how I saw it." As a young man watching these spy movies, he was drawn to the idea of being a spy because the idea of being able to do so much, wield so much power while being so in the shadows and seemingly not, no one would notice you, is something that really drew him to it.
He must have loved James Bond then, I guess. Do you know what,
I think he probably enjoyed the movies,
what
but
was the
preferred the Soviet.
It was
Well,
Soviet
there were
equivalent.
Soviet spy movies. They didn't have a James Bond type figure, but they did have spy movies. So yeah, pretty much. I mean, like that is kind of
Dmitry Brushutskin. Dmitry Brushutskin.
yeah. That's
Pavel. Alexander Pavel.
You're just literally naming Russian names. That's the banter. Putin begins his work at the KGB, and the first few years are very boring. He works in Stalingrad, his home city, working just office counterintelligence. Counterintelligence is basically like you're checking that the people around you aren't spies themselves. So you're kind of the people that everyone hates them. That's one of the roles, I guess. There's many things.
I would have thought
counterintelligence does,
counterintelligence would be like dealing with like intelligence threats in the country, right? So like
it is
countering the CIA. And okay, you're saying he's.
But that is
fine,
kind of, isn't it? Think about it. I mean, we don't know for sure, because with a lot of things with Putin, it's quite secretive. But we get the impression that you're absolutely right. Counterintelligence is about countering intelligence that threats your own country. But with Putin specifically, one of the main things that is, and this is part of the reason why the KGB and so many secret police are so scary, is that you don't know if they're they're your neighbour. They don't know if they're your neighbour talking to you about something, and you say one thing that slips, and suddenly the counterintelligence see that you might be an enemy of the state, and they lock you up. That's essentially Putin's role, or that's what we think in those early years, is that he's the kind of person that's checking that there's no one that's deviating from the Soviet line.
Well, like my worldview of like, the Soviet Union intelligence agency would be like the counterintelligence is but one rung, and there is a counterintelligence, and there's a counterintelligence with a counter to them. Well,
there is, mate. That is definitely. But you know what's fun? That is a thing, and the funny thing is that like we're never really you're even in the moment up to forever, you'll never really know where the line stops. And the only times you ever do kind of see this counter is World War II, because there were spies everywhere, and because it's so heavily documented and so much research has gone into it, that you can now see the lines of like, this guy was being countered by this guy, but then this guy was countering him. Yeah, it's like, oh shit, but you're countering him, and and it's like
the guy I initially was countering is actually the guy that's countering me.
Yeah, and you do get those stories with World War II, and sadly, although I'm sure it was happening, you don't really get them at the same extent nowadays, because it's just, how would we ever know? You never really know. You never know what the other person is thinking. So sadly, I think a lot of that will be lost. But you're right. I
look into your eyes, and I never know what's going on behind those beautiful blue blush and beauties.
Yeah, side note, me and my partner, my fiance, has been
Fucking here we go.
We're on a bit of a nonce watch at the moment. We've been watching documentaries on Jimmy Savile and Michael Jackson, and B was like,
I see where this is going. I see where this is going.
No.
So
I'm not going. I'm not going. I'm not. I was not about to attack you, but it is a bit weird that that's where you took that. Maybe something to think about. But no. All I was going to say was that every time we watch it, my partner goes, you can always see. It's in the eyes. They look so dead in the eyes. You can always see. And I'm like, yeah, I guess so, but like, So that was all I was, But thank you for
let me take my glasses
yourself.
off so you can.
Let me. Oh my god!
Dead,
now
as fuck.
She has a point. Anyway, no, that wasn't where I was going to go. But thank you for all that. So during this time in counterintelligence in Stalingrad, he met his future wife Lyudmila. I can't help but do an accent when I see a name that's Russian. Lyudmila. They dated for 3 years before Putin proposed at the age of 31. Apparently, he was not much of a romantic, Putin. In fact, often people describe him as a bit of a closed-off guy, not very sociable. It reminds me of someone. Finally, the KGB employ him.
Sorry, who? Who is that? It certainly isn't me. It's just not me.
It can't be me. Finally, the KGB...
I'm so open, and I'm so sociable. I went on TV, for God's sakes.
Finally, the KGB employ him on his first role outside of his home city of St. Petersburg, or Leningrad as it's known then. He's sent to Dresden in East Germany. Basically, his task while he's there is finding potential informants that could cross the border into West Germany and report on NATO and American infrastructure in West Germany. Again, not a particularly exciting role. I don't think he was particularly happy that he got it. But he arrives in Germany with his wife and his 2 daughters in 1985.
Vladimir Putin's 2 daughters from his marriage to Lyudmila Skrepneva, Maria Vorontsova, and Katerina Tikhonova. Both daughters have largely kept out the public eye and are involved in academic, business, and tech sectors.
Thanks, Zach. What is happening in Soviet Russia in 1985?
Glasnost and Perestroika.
A time before that.
Chernobyl.
Before that.
Gorbachev.
So Mikhail Gorbachev became General Secretary in 1985, and so essentially this is a really important period of time for the Soviet Union. Putin witnesses firsthand the ideals and the power of the Soviet Union stripped piece by piece away from the nation, and he blames Gorbachev for it, as many Russians do. So now we're going to talk about the collapse of the Soviet Union, because this is an incredibly important subject.
Mr. And Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
And I don't think it's nearly talked about enough, just how important this time period of history is in talking about anything that we talk about today. Gorbachev, using glasnost and perestroika, which, do you want to say what they both mean?
Oh, it's like openness and transparency or something like that. It's like...
Glasnost is openness, perestroika?
Rebuilding? Like
Close. Is
revitalization? Restructuring. Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, really important, basically. Gorbachev realised that the Soviet Union was not working. So he opens up these ideas like glasnost and perestroika, and using these, Gorbachev is actively trying to reform communism, to modernise it, I guess.
Yeah, he's doing what Deng Xiaoping did in the 1970s.
Exactly. He is not trying to get rid of communism, and he is absolutely not trying to get anyone to leave the Soviet Union. But what he is doing without realising is allowing everyone to have a voice about how to make this country better, and in the process, no one wants to fucking stay in this country anymore. So he basically lets the genie out of the bottle, and from there, he's completely fucked and he cannot put it back in. So, yeah, the Berlin Wall came down in 1989.
Was Putin in East Germany at the time the Berlin Wall came down? Wow.
He was, and funnily enough, when the Berlin Wall came down and the Germans were starting to shout for their own, East Germany was shouting to be reunited, apparently there was a big protest happening in Dresden. They went to the Stasi headquarters in Dresden and had some really loud protesting, banging on the door, and the KGB headquarters, which Putin was the senior officer of at that night, was just around the corner. So a bunch of those protesters then said, why don't we go bang on the doors of the KGB office at the same time? Because we're angry, we want reunification. And so they go, and they bang on the door, and Putin is there with his colleagues, and they're like, fuck, what do we do? So they call up Moscow, and they go, what do we do? This is crazy. And Moscow doesn't answer. They don't respond. They just leave them to their own devices. And it infuriates Putin.
Must be scary, like, when you're I mean, yeah rightfully so, because like the East Germans are...
They're evil.
Yeah,
the Stasi are horrible.
Yeah, imagine being there, like, oh my god, this might be the end here. This baying mob wants blood, but it's very peaceful protests, weren't they?
I don't think there was any bloodshed in Dresden on that night. In general, the protests in East Germany, it was by far one of the better places for protests in East Germany. I mean, compared to say Lithuania, which I'm not going to talk about much. I would like, by the way, I would love to talk about the collapse of the Soviet Union as its own podcast. There's just so much to it, and it really sets the tone for everything. We are going to talk about it a little bit here, so we will go through some stuff. But basically, Lithuania did have another protest that got violently cracked down. Yeah. So basically, like Poland, Czechoslovakia, a lot of these places, they eventually, through pressure, were able to get their own free and fair elections, or just reunified, like Germany did. However, when it came to the Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, for some reason, it was there that Gorbachev was like, no, that's too far. We need to keep them.
Yeah,
so he sent a bunch of... which I guess it's close to their borders, right? Same with it would have been the same for Belarus or Ukraine.
Following the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, like there was this clear desire for like the Soviet Union to have the Baltic states. Like they've always pretty wanted them, and also at the same time, the Baltic states they're too small to really be independent and like stand up on their own against Mother Russia. So there's probably this weight you can throw around with the Baltic states. whereas you can't necessarily do the same thing with Poland. One, you're right, because its borders won't necessarily be directly on yours, so you don't have to worry about NATO. And secondly, it's quite a big, populous country. You'd imagine a fairly more advanced military than the Baltic states.
To be honest with you, I think all of what you're saying is true, but I just think it's more... I mean, it's kind of the same with Putin's feeling that NATO's come too far now. It's like, I just think the closer you are to Moscow, the more threatened any Russian leader feels. You know, it's just a plane, you know? A plane of ground that you can take from Germany to Russia, to Moscow. So I think any buffer you can have is beneficial. And I think while Poland and Germany were more acceptable, to lose the Baltic states, I think was more of a problem. As it would have been, like I say, for Belarus and Ukraine, who at this point were not protesting in the same way. Anyway, going back to
your reasoning for? Do you think the Russian justification of like not having NATO on our borders is like legitimate at all, or do you think it's more just like an ability to be able to justify their own actions?
Both. I think it's both. So I do think, and this is one thing that I didn't have written down, but I probably was going to say at some point, that I think the USA fucked up massively in that when the Soviet Union collapsed, they really did not help Russia at all deal with it, and they kept NATO. That's the big thing. For me, keeping NATO was stupid because it is intimidating. If you say, like, Russia's now this poor as fuck country, it's had this eternal enemy, this alliance that's been around for several decades of years, and it's not gone. Technically, if communism is gone, then why is this not gone as well? Why has NATO stayed? So I think that was a huge mistake, and I do think there is some argument to it. Having said that, I think that expansionist wars like Putin's doing, he's using it as a way to just justify being an imperial state that wants to expand its borders. Well, so I think it's both. I personally think it's both. I think you can be threatened by the idea that you're too close to your enemies, but at the same time not use it as a reason to start invading other countries. Like, Putin could have very easily have just gone, we are not, you know, diplomacy could have worked. He could have gone, look, we are not your enemy. We are Russians, but we can work with you. It really mattered who became the next president of Russia, and Putin was, you know, one of the worst people it could have been because he was so anti the West, which we weren't really aware of until, you know, as years gone by. So I think it's both. Is how it's.
I can't remember if you said it yet, but Putin is like an immense admirer of the Russian Empire. Like, I'm not sure particularly if he's a fan of Stalin. But I know for a fact, I think he's a fan of like the early Tsars and like Peter the Great and stuff like that, who pushed Russia out from being just like a lowly state to having this like bulwark against the West, essentially.
Yeah, you're right, but I don't think that's particularly special. I think that's kind of any dictator's kind of got a hard-on for its own militaristic leaders from the past. I think if you've got any ambitions of your own to, you know, you've read history. I mean, Putin reads history. He reads a lot about World War II. He understands. He's a clever guy. He gets a lot of this stuff. And I do think that when you've got that ego, I mean, he's obviously an egomaniac. He's obviously a narcissist. He obviously wants his name to be in the history books. He said two famous quotes, soon after becoming president, and I think they both speak to how he feels, right? So the first one, and you probably know this one because this is a very famous Vladimir Putin quote, is he said, "The demise of the Soviet Union was the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the century." The other quote, which I think is more interesting, is he said, this is in 2000, he said, "Anyone who doesn't regret the passing of the Soviet Union has no heart. Anyone who wants it restored has no brains." So I think that from Putin's perspective, he recognised the faults of it and recognised it does not work in this modern day. And while he is empathetic towards the Soviet system, I think he recognises that actually Russia was the heart of it anyway. Russia is the Soviet Union, and you know, if I can be more like the Tsars of old, then that kind of makes me an even cooler leader than being, you know, Stalin. Like to be a Tsar of like this imperial palace is, I think, more appeals to his ego anyway. So that's what I think it is with him.
Do you think he's an intelligent man, Putin?
Yes, I do. Yeah, but I would say as well that while I think he's clever, I'm not saying like Putin's really intelligent. I just think he's very, very savvy. Yeah, he was a thug. Yeah, he learned. He was on the streets. He learned how to deal with certain things, and I think he's much more clever than maybe we give on that we think he is. But not necessarily in academics.
He's very. What you can tell from the Ukraine war and his dealings with Trump is he's far smarter than Trump is.
Outplaying him.
But like,
playing him every time.
His political calculations are like on the money every time. Like he
Yeah.
He was banking on like Trump coming in, like
Yeah.
putting more pressure on Ukraine as ahead of the Trump peace talks, gets his guys in with Steve Witkoff and tells Steve Witkoff everything that he wants to tell them, and Steve Witkoff comes out spouting Kremlin propaganda, and like the peace plan that comes across the desk of Trump is like literally written by Putin. It's written by the Kremlin. So like he's just whatever you say about the guy, like, you know, it might be a horrible guy and what he's doing in Ukraine is awful, but like he's playing an unbelievable hand politically. The downside of that is that operationally and practically on the ground, like you look at the massive amounts of Russian lives being lost. Coming back to my point of like the lack of value in Russian life for the everyday citizen. But yeah, he will use whatever he has at his disposal to achieve his political means and aims. Yeah, I guess that probably makes him smart, but at the same time, cold and calculating.
He's never been like an idiot. He might not be academically smart, but he clearly knows what he's doing. And in this, I'd say the exact same for Xi Jinping. And I would say that both are looking at many leaders in the West and either think useful idiot we can use, or really weak and we can exploit them in some other way.
Yeah.
Or at least their standing is weak. Not necessarily that the man is weak or the woman is weak, but that they're standing in society. That, you know, as we've seen in the last few years, democracy is actually really fragile. It's very difficult to keep it together.
Well, at least in recent
so I think
times.
they're seeing it. I think they're seeing that and taking note of it. Anyway, let's go back. So, like I say, the Baltic states were not accepting, and they wanted to leave as soon as possible, wanted to gain independence, and Gorbachev pushed down on them hard. Because of all this, you know, these states were trying desperately to dismantle the Soviet Union and get their own independence, get the hell out there. One of the only organisation, really the main organisation, that still believed and still fought for the Soviet Union and its purest communist ideas was the KGB and was Putin. So in 1991, there was a coup by the KGB to get rid of Gorbachev and save the Soviet Union. The coup failed awfully. And to be honest, it just accelerated the dissolution of the Soviet Union. And this is partly because of a man which you're going to love. He's one of the most important figures in Putin's life, and his name is...
It's the guy after Gorbachev. What's his name? The Russian Prime Minister. I can't remember his name, but the guy who eats a pizza on the streets of New York.
Pizza guy! The pizza guy! He's Boris Yeltsin.
Boris Yeltsin. That's it. I knew it was a B. I couldn't remember it.
Yeah, so Boris Yeltsin is a senior Soviet politician in the 90s. He hates Gorbachev, despite the fact Gorbachev was the one that brought him into Moscow in the first place in 1985. He's a clever clogs, right? He realises the inevitable. He realises that the Soviet Union is starting to fall apart, and so he distances himself from it. He's very popular amongst Russians, and he publicly announces that he's leaving the Communist Party while applying for the role of Russian president. So he knows that the Soviet Union is done for, and he knows that the smart political play would become the leader of Russia rather than the Soviet Union. Yeah. You never know, but that's how he played it. He becomes the first democratically elected official in Russia's 1,000 years history.
How democratically elected was he?
I think democratically.
What's the percentage? Because that's how we typically tell these things. Like,
I don't know the percentage. I don't think it's one of those fraud ones. I mean, he didn't have much power, so like I don't think it's not like, you know, he faked the election. There we go. He starts typing now to find out.
No, I'm just okay. Yeah, on the face of it, it doesn't seem like it's a rigged election.
Yeah, exactly.
54% for Boris Yeltsin of the Independent Party and 40.7% for Gennady Zyuganov of the KPKF.
So yeah, he was basically really popular. And when this coup happens, right, this is quite funny, right? So this coup happens. These top communists in the Soviet Union, the KGB head, the vice president, and a few other of the top dogs of the Soviet Union, coup against Gorbachev. They take him. He's currently vacationing. He's currently holidaying.
He goes to his dacha in Sochi or something, wherever it is. Like
close, Crimea. Basically in his holiday home.
He's in house arrest, basically.
And he's couped. He's couped. They go in. They bring in the tanks.
They got him.
They bring in the tanks.
We couped him.
They lock him up. His wife has a heart attack because she thinks they're both about to die.
Shit.
Gorbachev also believes that they're both about to die. He really, because that's so classic, you know, Soviet Union coup, kill them, get them out of the way. So he thinks it's over. Anyway, the only person that's popular enough to oppose this coup is Boris Yeltsin. So they send this is so funny. So these idiots, right? The head of the KGB and stuff. They send like a few tanks down to the office of the Russian president. The Soviet Union is so unpopular at this time that there's like protesters in the streets going, "We're so fucking tired of this. Fuck off!" And they're like pulling people off the tanks and like going like, "Why are you doing this? No one wants this. Why are you here?" And obviously the tank commander and the soldiers don't really want to shoot these protesters. And so Boris Yeltsin comes out, big chest. He comes out and he stands on top of the tank with his protesters arm in arm, and he goes,
good, isn't
"You
he?
don't want a coup. We don't want a coup here. We're fucking Russia. Fuck this is so ridiculous. Let Gorbachev live." Despite the fact Boris Yeltsin hates Gorbachev, he's like, "Come on, let him go. This is ridiculous." At the same time, the KGB and these like top dogs, the vice president, I think his name's Yanayev or something, they hold a press conference to explain the situation. So they're all there, they're kind of scrunched together, and there's these reporters going, "What? Why are you doing this? Why is Gorbachev under a coup?" And they're like,
I think I saw this.
They're shaking a bit, and they're like, "We locked him up, and we plan to let him out once he gives us the keys." And they look so weak. Meanwhile, Boris Yeltsin is there, like arm in arm with the Russian people, standing on a tank. When I think about this moment, it so exemplifies the problem that the Soviet Union always had. It thinks in this modern world of the 90s that they can do the things that they've been doing for decades and decades and decades, and the fact is the Soviet Union and the Russians were just tired of it. They're sick of these coups and these little politics and the fucking ridiculous. They're just like, "Oh, fuck off." So they have to release Gorbachev. It's hilariously pathetic. His wife and him are come back, but it only helps Boris Yeltsin because Gorbachev now has no authority. He's been couped. He's been cooed in his dacha. He's got nothing left.
Cooed as a verb.
He's been cooed and he's got nothing left.
Him.
One side of the leadership look incompetent and the other side of the leadership look weak. So, meanwhile, Boris Yeltsin is more popular than ever. So, Yeltsin seizes the advantage, and this is hilarious as well. He stands next to the leaders of Belarus and Ukraine, the three most populous and important states of the Soviet Union left of this union. They stand together and they all say at the same time, "We're leaving." So how can there be a Soviet Union
without
if Russia's leaving it? Like, what the fuck? So
it's
in
so
that
smart,
moment,
isn't it? Such great
it's
political power
smart.
play.
So I believe it was on Christmas Day, 1991. Yeltsin forcibly kicks Gorbachev and his wife out of the private residence. He removes the Soviet star from the Kremlin, and he forces Gorbachev on Christmas Day to give a resignation speech. And that was how the Soviet Union collapsed. So while the wheels are falling off, Germany reunites and 41-year-old Vladimir Putin returns to St. Petersburg, seeing all of this and going, "What the actual fuck?" He's been watching all of it happen with disbelief, and then the KGB starts to dissolve itself. So what does he do? Do you know?
Putin?
Yeah.
He runs for office?
Yes, pretty much. He begins a career in politics. He doesn't run for office, but he essentially he gets together with his old St. Petersburg lecturer or someone that worked in the St. Petersburg University, Anatoly Sobchak. He's just about to run for mayor of St. Petersburg.
Big position there, isn't it? Probably
it's a big
second to mayor of Moscow.
Exactly. So he starts.
It'd be like Andy Burnham.
Yeah, a little bit, I guess, yeah. Putin begins his career in politics as an advisor on international affairs to the mayor of St. Petersburg. Eventually, he becomes the deputy mayor himself, Putin. Realistically, he was the mayor, Sobchak's, way of getting things done behind the scenes, shadily. He had plenty of ties to the gangs.
As is the Russian way.
Unsurprising.
Well,
Sobchak's
nothing's done legitimately.
Exactly. Sobchak's the man that's in front of the cameras. He's the one that has to seem like a mayor and not like a thug. So he gets Putin behind the scenes to do all the work. He has plenty of ties to the gangs and the mafia of the city, and he's using his KGB expertise to do all the dodgy stuff that the mayor doesn't want to be aired publicly. And he's good at it as well. In 1996, Putin is sent to Moscow, where he worked as deputy chief of the Presidential Property Management Department. This meant basically managing the transfer of Soviet assets to the Russian Federation.
Oh, wow.
So you can imagine,
not
only is that a big job, but you can imagine that is a crucially useful place if you want to be corrupt as fuck. You can be hella corrupt.
His whole vibe is like, I won't spoil it, I guess, but his whole vibe is like giving people power and money to cement their loyalty. So you give him a position where he can exert loads of corruption. And they're like, okay, this is the perfect role for him.
Yeah, pretty much, and it also just gives him the chance to talk to so many other people, because he's already made loads of ties. His time as the KGB, his time in St. Petersburg, now his time in Moscow. He is just constantly making friends, making allies, making people that will be loyal to him in the future through these kind of really dodgy dealings. And yeah,
so like killing people and like beating people up and stuff like that, or
yeah, well, that again, we don't know much, because especially when he's less of a thing, we have less. Like, none of these records come from Russia. Putin doesn't want anyone to know that he's beating up people. So all the information we do know about him doing stuff like that is from either independent investigations, which there weren't many when he was a small piece of a big jigsaw.
Yeah.
Or the Americans, like I say, when he's not that important, they're not going to be doing that much research. So we don't really know. But you can imagine
the
maybe
CIA probably have tabs on him, don't they? Quite well.
Not really.
If he's a significant KGB officer, they probably have like they have excessive files on him. You'd thought.
Well, this is the problem, and this is why I think George Bush Sr. did such a stupid job, was that he treated Russia like it wasn't an enemy anymore, and then Russia did not become they were no longer the threat to America, so they weren't keeping tabs in the same way they would do now, but they didn't get rid of NATO. He kind of was half and half. Either you treat Russia as an enemy, or you act as if they're your friend. So no, they weren't really checking. Apparently, the first time they met... Listen to this. Apparently, the first time that the US really understood anything about Putin was when Boris Yeltsin specifically told them that Vladimir Putin was an up-and-coming guy that he really likes and he thinks maybe could succeed in one day. Because Boris Yeltsin did have good relations with the Americans. So that's how they found out about him, firstly. So no, they didn't really know that much about him.
Yeah, I guess you forget that like NATO was set up to specifically combat Russian expansionism and Russian imperialism.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, what role does it have in like this modern non-Soviet world, right? If the whole thing is
up.
Yeah. Well,
They
I don't
really
think they're
fucked
fucked
up
up because NATO is a good thing. Like, it is an important.
No, I'm not saying
thing
disband it. Bring Russia in. Change the narrative into we are there to
bring
protect
Russia in, though. You can't do that.
democracies.
Because if you bring Russia in, though, they'll utilise the levers they have available to them to conduct wars without the opportunity
not if
for
at the same
article fires
time
pushed against them.
Not if at the same time you invest in their country, like America did with Europe after World War II. Invest in the infrastructure, pump money into their economy so that they don't have to eat bread for 10,000 Russian rubles.
Bread.
What are they called?
What sort of fucking bread, mate?
And make them more
Baker.
make them more democratic. I mean, they didn't do any of that. They let Russia deal with it. They were like, we've won the Cold War, you've lost, so you deal with the fact that your people can't pay for food. That was the problem. So yes, of course, adding them into NATO wouldn't have solved the problems. But if those two things are combined, then Russia could be like other parts of Europe today. You know, it could be like Germany.
Yeah, I just don't think it's got that same like ideology. Maybe I'm being like
what do you mean?
pessimistic.
Germany's ideology 2 years prior to America pumping money into them was to kill every Jew and to take over the world.
Yeah, no, you got me there.
I don't,
Absolutely,
oh yeah, that's fine. But Russians, no, they're a bit too much. Of course they could have. Of course they could have. This is why I feel so passionately that the '90s America and the West, not just America, but predominantly since America's the boss, America really fucked up, and that's why we're in the situation we're in today. Because so many of the things that happen today is because of how Russia is as a country, and so many of those things could have been avoided, in my opinion, if they had been more helpful to Russia in the '90s. Anyway. It's a rant that I could rant any time of the week, honestly. It really gets my blood pumping.
Yeah, I mean, our most viral TikTok is, or one of our most viral TikToks is you ranting about Russia, and here we are ranting about Russia again.
So like I say, Putin is essentially doing a lot of the dodgy dealings behind the scenes, as he has done for a lot of his political career and kind of what he's done for the KGB as well. This is where Putin really starts to rise quickly. He would meet and work alongside the Russian president Boris Yeltsin, and after two quick promotions, in 1998, Yeltsin appointed Putin as the director of the FSB, the Federal Security Service of the Russian Federation, essentially the new KGB. This is by far one of the most powerful jobs in Russia, and Putin has achieved it after only 2 years in Moscow. So Putin is suddenly home. I mean, he's now the boss of the company that he essentially worked for decades, an organisation that he dreamed of working for as a boy. Throughout his time in politics, Putin has made sure to work alongside very carefully, and often corruptedly, with the ultra-wealthy of this new Russia, which are known, of course,
the
as
oligarchs.
Similarly to Stalin, really, when Stalin became secretary under Lenin's Soviet Union, he's essentially using that time to cozy up to the right people and to give favours to those that he can then use and can help further his career later on. He's basically building his way to becoming the top dog. And now at the FSB, Putin used surveillance to regulate the flow of finances. That's one of the things he was doing, and helped save on some of the institutions of the oligarchs that were about to have. So basically, Putin has this idea that because of the information he knows that Russia's economy is only going to get worse. It's going to collapse. So what he does in his time is to make sure that certain oligarchs that are loyal or he thinks could be good allies in the future, he makes sure he helps them and their institutions.
Like Roman Abramovich.
Yes, exactly.
Usmanov.
Yeah.
And all the other Premier League Russian oligarchs.
He's essentially making sure that the people that he can help are the ones that are nice to him and will help him later on. So now the year is 1999. Boris Yeltsin has become an extremely unpopular first president of Russia. At the beginning, he was like the most popular politician in the Soviet Union. And now he is by far the most hated. And basically, that's because of awful economic conditions, a very unpopular military campaign in Chechnya, and Yeltsin's...
Which Putin leads, right?
Well, don't worry, we'll get to that in a bit. But yeah, he does do something in Chechnya. And also Yeltsin's embarrassingly erratic behaviour. Like, he's an enormous alcoholic. We talked about his hilarious pizza story in America. I mean, the idea... I mean, literally think about it. You've got the Soviet Union and all their famous leaders, and you've got Putin. And just nestled in that sandwich of very important people of these years is Chad Yeltsin, who's like getting so drunk in Washington that he's like screaming to Washington cab drivers to go get him a pizza somewhere, naked, by the way. If you haven't heard that story, he's in the early mornings.
Go check it out
on
our TikTok.
It is. I don't know where. It's quite far back, I think. But yeah, Yeltsin basically asks. He's naked in the street. This is the Russian president that goes out naked in the early hours in Washington and screams, "I want pizza! Go take me, cab driver, let's go get some pizza." And his Secret Service had to bring him back.
Pizza.
How embarrassing is that? Anyway, so that's the kind of leader he is, and the Russian people despise him, especially because they're poverty-stricken. The Russian economy has absolutely collapsed, and yeah, the people just feel embarrassed. They're very proud people, Russians, and they felt very ashamed of the situation they suddenly were in when the Soviet Union, despite all its flaws, was quite a proud, place, and suddenly they're like, well, man, we are a laughingstock. Anyway, Yeltsin himself was worried that their anti-corruption charges could land him in prison soon enough. Funnily enough, he'd survived impeachment that year, and he realised that another impeachment could be coming soon, and he needed to find a new capable successor. So, as the year 2000 approaches, Yeltsin finds himself relying quite often on this efficient, savvy, quiet Putin for many issues. The atmosphere in Russian politics at this point is so toxic. There are not many good, competent candidates that Yeltsin could pick. Putin kind of made the natural choice because, most people in politics didn't really know who he was. And most people at the top end of politics could accept him. Weirdly, the thing that made Putin so electable in Boris Yeltsin's eyes was the fact that he was neither so likable that, he was in the public eye, but he was also not so unlikable. Barely anyone knew or cared. No one really knew much about him because he was so quiet in the shadows. So, none of the higher-ups would have gone, no, it can't be Putin. Because they don't really know that much about him. Yeah. It's this lack of polarisation in an incredibly polarised country.
He's done, Machiavellian work. He's done this Machiavellian work behind the scenes to, shore up his position with the people that matter, while at the same time staying out of the public eye for the people that don't matter or that might try and use this against him. So he's just played his cards, again, very well. And he's found out exactly where the levers of power are. He's lobbied and influenced those people. Yeah.
It is almost all his work, don't get me wrong, but he has gotten lucky. I mean, this is a time and a place where he's really... I mean, he's climbed up the ladder very quickly, and now he's in a position where he kind of just does suit the bill. Also, the other thing is that he's quite loyal, Putin, to Yeltsin. And Yeltsin was worried, because of these anti-corruption charges, that him and his family and his close staff could be in big danger when he gets kicked out. So he thought Putin might be one of the only potential candidates that would actually protect him. So Putin announces himself as the official candidate for the next Russian presidential election, and it's Yeltsin that backs him.
Presidential
of the year 2000, yeah. And Yeltsin backs
the turn of millennium, the turn of Russia.
Yeah. And this is where things get slightly sneaky, right? So in the autumn, and this is what you're talking about, in the autumn of 1999, there are several separate bombings that happen in quick succession. In Moscow, Dagestan, and also in Volgodonsk. Putin immediately blames them all on the Chechen militant Shamil Basayev. Basayev denied the bombings, and at the same time as some of these bombings going off, there was a bus driver who spotted a group of ethnic white Russians, not Chechens, that plant a bomb in an apartment and then call the FSB headquarters. An identical bomb to the ones that had been used previously in other bombings.
Oh, so
And then at the same time, the speaker of the Russian State Duma, his name is Gennady Zelensnyov, announces in a press conference that there has been another bombing. The only problem is that this bomb in this place doesn't actually happen for 3 days after the announcement.
Oh my god.
So it's pretty fucking clear that there's something going wrong. And not only is that fucking sus,
is this after or before Putin's elected?
No. So Putin is, remember, he's the leader of the FSB. I think at this point he's given another role. Maybe he's acting prime minister or something.
He's the first deputy prime minister.
There you go. And he's applying to become president of Russia. And at this moment, there are several bombings, some of which maybe the first one or some was probably true, probably was some Chechen militants, whatever. But they use this, and then they basically sneakily use it as a false flag operation. And not only is what I've just told you fucking ridiculously sus, but there was only ever in Russia one independent investigation that happened into these claims that maybe it might not have been the Chechens. Out of that team that were doing it, 2 of the members were assassinated, and one was put in prison for several years. So it's like
I shouldn't be laughing. I should not be laughing.
It's like
it's terrible.
Like the idea. There are times, and I think this is because of misinformation that Russians really try to put into social media that Putin's not that bad. But there are times I've met people that don't actually think Vladimir Putin is a bad person, and when I hear stuff like this, I'm like, this needs to be understood. He is not a good person. This is someone that will kill and will do anything to get his way into power, and he would do it with other people as well. This is a guy that the second he gets his moment to get to the top brass, he creates a false flag and he kills anyone that gets in his way of proving that what he's done is wrong. I've got another assassination story for you as well, but before I get to that, I'll just quickly explain the aftermath of this. So Putin uses this as a catalyst to begin the Second Russo-Chechen War as acting prime minister or deputy prime minister, like you say, and despite the allegations that he is corrupt and a crook, his popularity increases. Putin's aggressive reaction to these terrorist attacks were heavily approved by the Russian people. So out of nowhere, by the way, months ago, Putin was a complete unknown. I think he had like 2% of the national vote when he applied to become president, at the very beginning. Now he is the front runner for the election. And it is here that Yeltsin decides that the best way to guarantee a Putin presidency would be to resign, therefore making Putin the acting president, giving him months in the job as an incumbent before the election happens. So, and this is, I didn't really realize the date, but New Year's Eve, 1999. So one day before the millennium.
Oh yeah,
which is why it's so interesting to like think about. One day before the 2000s begin, Yeltsin publicly resigned on Russian state TV, and he announces that Putin will take over and his reign will begin in this turn of the new century. So all we think about as Putin is the commander of Russia, the man in charge of Russia. It is literally the 2000s, from New Year's Day to the day that we're talking now in 2026. He has been in charge, the president of Russia that entire time. I mean, there is obviously the caveat that he had to become prime minister in 2008 or 2010, but as we'll discuss in the next podcast that we do on Putin, he was still technically the leader. Medvedev was a side piece. If you really boil it down, from the very, very first day of this millennium, Putin has been in power in Russia, and so it's really interesting thing about it in that sense. So Yeltsin resigns, he's finally gone. Putin is now in charge, and he immediately picks advisors and members of his administration who will be loyal to him, including Dmitry Medvedev. Medvedev had worked alongside Putin in St. Petersburg when Putin had begun his political career there.
It's good mates, are they?
I think at the time they were, or not necessarily mates. I mean, I've seen some video clips while I was researching them, like drinking tea and working out together. So maybe they were mates, but or maybe it's just fucking propaganda like everything is. But
it feels like
who
would
knows?
do. A little finance bro drinking tea
like,
and working out.
When you drink tea and have a workout, why have you got a ton of cameras just taking photos of you the entire time? It's a bit fucking sus. Anyway, so yeah, he was invited to Moscow in 1999 and continued to working for Putin from there. For the election campaign in 2000, Medvedev was his campaign manager, which was something I didn't know. And then this is the final thing that's going back on what I said earlier about assassinations. At this point, Putin's old mentor, Anatoly Sobchak, who I mentioned earlier, was the mayor of St. Petersburg, the person that started Putin's political career. He was sent on a mission to Kaliningrad for Putin.
Leningrad being the little strip of land between Lithuania and Poland?
Yes. I think that's right, yeah.
Is that, yeah?
Right. Anyway,
that
he's sent on a mission.
Russian territory, by the way.
Yes. He's sent on a mission there by Putin, where he died suddenly of a heart attack. It was presumed he would testify in upcoming corruption cases, and some associates had mentioned that Sobchak was worried about being poisoned. Now, bear in mind, this is a man who knew all about Putin's early political politics, because Putin was the guy doing the dirty stuff for Sobchak. So, out of every politician in the whole of Russian politics, Sobchak is probably the one that knows the most about Vladimir Putin, more than anyone. And he dies of a sudden heart attack in Kaliningrad.
How old was he when he had the heart attack? I'm calling. It's just a heart attack.
Are you? You're saying it's genuine? Here he is. He was. Oh, to be fair, he wasn't young. He didn't look particularly healthy. He was 62. He was 62 years old.
Yeah, I'm on the Putin wave now.
yeah.
No, I'm not. I'm absolutely fucking not. But just a heart attack. Come on, he's 62 years old. You said it yourself. He looks bad shape.
Yeah,
I think that was just a normal heart attack. He's
normal.
Yeah, how dare you incriminate Vladimir Putin? He's all the way in Moscow.
Yeah, how could he do anything?
He couldn't have done anything.
You can't shoot a gun that far.
No, exactly.
So that's another reason why we think maybe there's more to it than we will know. But hopefully, maybe in many years down the line, we will learn a lot more about what actually happened. But I do think a lot of these mysteries will probably get lost to time, because they'll delete all the evidence, because that's kind of how it works. But who knows? Maybe we'll find out more down the line. So anyway, back in the year 2000, Putin has now steamrolled the 2000 Russian presidential election. He is no longer the acting president. He is now the official president of Russia. It is there that we're going to end this episode talking about Vladimir Putin's rise to becoming president.
Exciting. It's a good story, isn't it? You can imagine the amount of people that he's killed and manipulated and beaten up and had sent to prisons to cement his position of power. But like it is fundamentally crazy. Like there are only a few countries you can get away with something like that, and Russia is one of them.
Yeah, I think it's easy to forget some of the details of what makes Vladimir Putin. Like, as much as we like to have a laugh, as we do with pretty much any dictator we talk about on this podcast, at the end of the day, these are all quite bad people. And when we're talking about him, for example, I felt like I knew a little bit about Vladimir Putin before I researched this, but I had forgotten the specific examples of when he'd actually assassinated people, or when things just seemed quite dodgy. And, looking at this now, it's like, my God, the evidence. If you were like, this wasn't like
is there.
The evidence is there. Like, when Biden and people were saying like a few years ago, like, this guy's a crook, like he is a war criminal, he has been doing this, we've never liked him, blah 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 blah. Like, he wasn't saying it without any basis. Like, this is genuinely a dictator. This is genuinely someone that really has things often in a really bad way. It's easy to forget the kind of bad things he's had to do to get to this point, and the bad things he will continue to do going forward. But if I was listening to this pod as a listener, I would be glad that I now know this fact about who he assassinated, or this kind of ridiculous drama, because you genuinely have to fight misinformation that's happening in the world today. There are people that go, well, is he that bad? Because I've read online on Facebook from this comment that actually the West is at fault, and actually Vladimir Putin's quite nice. And realistically, they're reading that because they're reading a Russian bot that's completely convinced them, and that's just the way it is. And to be able to know more information about the situation, I genuinely think is really quite useful. So I love learning about this stuff. I love talking about it because it's so fascinating, and it's also really important to what our everyday lives, and more so than we realise.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's an important thing, because that understanding of Putin has just been warped, and it's no longer the understanding of who he is as a man is kind of like floated behind the scenes, especially like the rise of the far right in different countries around Europe and the world. But thank you very much for that deep dive into Vladimir Putin.
Thank you, and thank you for listening to our first virtual episode. I hope the audio has worked well, and it seems like it fairly standard. I mean, we believe that the vast majority of people that watch our podcast listen to the audio version rather than watch the visuals. That's always the impression we've always got. So I'm hoping that this doesn't feel much different to the normal ones we've been doing. I mean, I guess we'll find out in feedback once we upload this one. But
I hate it. It's terrible. It's awful. I'm going to stop listening.
Please, talk in person. We don't want this anymore. I just hope that. Yeah, I hope you guys were able. It didn't feel any different, I guess, is what I'm saying. I hope it feels like you're just listening to a normal podcast we're doing, because we love talking about subjects that we're really interested in, and this absolutely is one of them. And I can't wait to find out what Zach's going to do on our next one. We're still going to do, by the way, podcasts that are in person and podcasts that are virtual. We're not now becoming a virtual one. We're going to do both.
Yeah, it just gives us a bit more flexibility and doesn't cost as much as well.
Exactly, it's way more.
Pump out way more content for you lovely people listening.
Exactly. What are you going to do next?
What am I going to do next? I don't actually know. I think I might do the Sharon or something like that. That's for topical. I like to do things that are relevant today.
Cold War. When you having to go at me for constantly doing Cold War. That's crazy.
I think we've been a bit too modern lately, so I kind of want to go back to something like maybe some ancient history. Yeah, I think we have been, haven't we?
Last episodes of the most recent pods.
Last few episodes have like mostly all been 1900s. Because we've had World War II, the Holocaust, we had the rise of the Nazis.
So you think it's time for us to go to a medieval or classic one?
Not even medieval. I think further back. I think like something really far back, like the Egyptians or something.
Romans or something.
Yeah, well, Rome is a tough nut to crack that I've not even thought about doing yet. But I think you're better suited, seeing as you speak Italian, to do something like that.
Well, actually, they spoke Latin back then, so.
Yeah, and you probably understand it, don't you?
That's a mistake. I should.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for listening to the episode. We'll catch you next time. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.